Hello, world, and welcome back to another episode from Beyond the Matrix. My name is Sarah, and today we're going to be talking about the sun because it's Sunday, which is the sun's day. So the sun is currently in the sign of Aquarius, right here, and it is nearly exactly opposing the moon right now. The moon is moving into the opposition with the sun, which we know is called a full moon. So it's the Leo full moon because the moon is in the sign of Leo. Anytime there's a full moon, the sun is opposite from the moon. And so that's why, well, that explains the sun being in the sign of Aquarius. So not only is the sun opposing the moon for this full moon, but the sun is also moving through a square with Uranus. That's right here, Uranus in Taurus. And Uranus is the planet of shocking revelations. So with these things that we are letting go for the full moon, that's what the full moon is about, letting things go, pruning things away, and getting rid of what no longer serves us. It will also be perhaps eruptive. This axis of Aquarius and Leo, where the sun is in Aquarius, the moon is in Leo, this has a lot to do with our reputation, basically. It's the sun in Aquarius defines itself by what it is not. And that's because it's opposing its home sign of Leo. So the sun is actually in detriment in this arrangement for this full moon. So the sun in Aquarius might feel lonely or cast off, shunned, and it's in Saturn's sign with Saturn co-present. So it's almost as if the sun is in the boundary of the cosmos because that's what Saturn represented to the ancients. That was the last observable planet for them, as far as we know. And then beyond Saturn was the heavens, the abyss. So that's why Aquarius has this rebel stereotype. It's seen as, well, Aquarius is a new and an inventive sign. So it's quirky, it's strange, it's expressing itself in this kind of counterculture way. It doesn't want to fit in. It doesn't want to conform. It doesn't need people to validate it. In fact, it would rather be by itself. But it also has this interest in the collective. So I say it wants to be by itself. That's probably like a shadow of this archetype, or could be a depressed state for the archetype. But because Aquarius is the water bearer, this is the humanitarian, this is somebody that wants to serve the collective. And so what I see with Aquarius is somebody wants to serve the collective using their own skills, what makes them very unique. They want to serve the collective in a way where it's fulfilling because it's something they're really good at and nobody else can do. So they're really inventive. And the moon in Leo is really expressive, very creative. And it's missing this validation from the community if it does not present that artwork or that music or whatever it is that makes the Leo creative. If they're not expressing that to the collective, then it seems it can be very depressing because I'm creating and this is amazing and isn't it? And then there's nobody there to validate that for them. So Leo is, again, the home sign of the sun, and that's where the moon is right now. And Leo needs the group to tell it if it's doing all right, if you're acceptable. but it's kind of to define what it is. So where Aquarius knows for sure, I am this and I am not that, Leo wonders, what am I? What do people like about me? What makes me, deserving of attention? And so there is this real struggle with, am I worthy for people to observe me? Am I worthy for an audience? And that's why it's so nice when somebody with a Leo moon figures out how to express themselves in a creative way, because then they can serve the collective by being themselves. And it's not to say that if, any planet in Aquarius can't express itself and be itself and that's good enough, but it's not good enough for the native. The Aquarian needs to know that it's different. It needs to know that it's not the same, where Leo needs to know that it's accepted. So Aquarius isn't just serving the collective to be defined. It's serving the collective in this way where it's very assured about what it's coming to the table with. And the Leo archetype is on stage and just really thrives on being seen and being told what they are. So this is, I'm kind of like leaning into this being this Socratic axis. I'm just like coining the term. So if anybody ever uses it, that was me. But because Socrates is kind of seen as a controversial figure at sometimes, and he was actually exploring what he was not by asking other people questions. And he becomes this kind of figure of Socrates. So it's like, that's who he is. Everybody validated that person that he was. And it all came from this self-exploration that was geared towards what he was not, figuring out what he was not. So that's interesting. It's an interesting connection there. So when we're considering things to let go of here, it's not let go of Aquarius and just be Leo, or let go of Leo and just be Aquarius. It's find the shadows within both of those. So Aquarius's shadow is that it wants to self-isolate. It doesn't want to be around people. It wants to be rebellious, even to the point where it's provocative, because in some sense, maybe it just wants to upset people to show that it's different. Whereas Leo in the shadow is, self-centered, egotistic, needy. So those are some of the things, not to say that, we have to let go of everything at once, because that can be overwhelming, but picking one of those shadow traits of these archetypes is a good way to work with it. And to reflect on the sun today, as the moon is doing, I'm going to read from Demetra George's Ancient Astrology in Theory and Practice. This is one of my textbooks. This is from the chapter about planets, and she specifically goes into the sun and the moon. And I'm just going to read that section because it's relevant to what's going on today. Understanding the sun and the moon helps us to get an idea of what this full moon is about, what we need to be letting go of, and the dynamic between these two luminaries. So about the sun, she says, the sun is nature's fire, and it represents the light of the intellect, the organ of mental perception, the life breath and its movement. It represents the soul as the divine part of the human mind. It is recognized for its heating and somewhat drying qualities. It indicates the paternal and ruling person, public reputation, people of nobility and high repute, and honors. The sun rules the head, the right eye, the heart, gold, wheat, and barley, the color yellow, the bitter taste, and Sunday. The poetic name of the sun was Phos, or light itself. The planetary gods associated with the sun are Shemesh, Helios, and Apollo. All were portrayed with beams of light emanating from their heads, and they were connected to divination and oaths. The nature of the sun is to build. Its essence, according to Valens, is the ruler of light. From a modern perspective, it is the archetype of the leader and illuminator. And then about the moon, she says, The moon reflects the light of the sun to Earth and represents a person's life, the entire physical body and conception. It is recognized for its humidifying qualities and is slightly warming. It indicates the mother and woman who rule, legitimate marriage, the mistress of the house, the nurse, and the matters of the household, the city and assemblies of people, and voyages and travel. It rules over the left eye, the stomach, breast, spleen, and marrow. Silver and glass, the color green, the salty taste, and Monday. The poetic name of the moon, Selene, means the bright or flashing flame. The moon was linked to the Babylonian god Sin, who measured time. In Greece and Rome, the moon was envisioned as the goddess Selene, who watches over the sleep of mortals. Then Artemis and Diana as the virgin huntress of the new moon and overseer of childbirth. The nature of the moon is to nourish. Its essence, according to Valens, is foresight. From a modern perspective, it is the archetype of the caretaker. The sun and moon as luminaries are referred to as the king and queen. This suggests that the roles of the other 5 planets fall under their auspices. And much like the ministers of a king and queen assist in bringing about the various matters of a person's life in accordance with their own natures. So what's really interesting about this setup of sun opposing the moon with Uranus in Taurus is the myth of Helios, which is featured in the Odyssey. So Helios is the god of an island called Thrinacia, and on this island, he has cattle. And of course, Taurus is the sign of the bull and also the cow, because that's a female bull. So what happens in that myth is that Odysseus's companions eat one of these immortal cattle that Helios and his daughters were tending to. And what's interesting about this myth is that there's a lot of discussion about how Odysseus should shun the island of Thrinacia. He shouldn't go there. And he ends up going. So this idea of the sun being in its detriment, this shunned outsider, Helios. And when his cattle are eaten, Helios, what happens is it's actually Odysseus's companions that sacrifice the cattle. So when Odysseus returns from praying, he sees that, or he learns that his companions had consumed, had killed, had sacrificed one of, or some of the cattle. And he's angry with them for disobeying him when he had specifically said not to eat the cattle, because that was kind of the big rule for being on this island that they were never supposed to go to anyway. And what's interesting here is, okay, Uranus, this planet of shocking revelations. Well, once Helios gets word of his cattle being killed, he's asking all the gods to punish these men. And so Zeus promises to send a lightning bolt, and that is a symbol that is associated with Uranus. So to try to describe Helios, Helios is the bearer of the sun. He carries the sun from east to west. And he threatened to take the sun to Hades if the gods did not punish these men for eating his cattle. So all of this, I mean, rebellion of eating the cattle when you know that you shouldn't, going to this shunned island, that's where the sun is right now, that's where Helios is literally right now, and far away from home. All of these people in the Odyssey are very far away from home. They're trying to get back home. And there is some very interesting themes and symbols that are present here. So I encourage you to look further into the Odyssey, or if you already know the full, if you've read it all, God bless you. I can't believe it. But this part of the Odyssey is something, it seems to be the mythology that I'm focused on for this full moon. So I hope that helps you to steer your ship during this full moon. And I will be back hopefully tomorrow to talk about the moon and maybe some shocking revelations that have come to me. Or maybe you have some shares that you'd like to comment below about how this full moon is playing out for you. So until then, have a great day.